Scent of a Game is a chronology of tiger poaching, shikar or wildlife big game hunting, and the international trade in endangered species as it has occurred through the ages and as it is happening even today. This is a fictionalized rendition, and you could call it a new genre of wildlife fiction or tiger fiction, and this is an absolutely new kind of a story, because the last time that we had wildlife fiction was when Jim Corbett wrote about his various exploits as a hunter of man-eating tigers and leopards. So this really covers the entire the past, and it has modern day contemporary characters living through contemporary situations who are all affected by the scent of their past or the scent of the game, and which is why the name of the story, Scent of a Game. Well, I've dealt with it in the book as well, and this let me give you a brief about what this story is all about, so that you can your readers can form an opinion about it. It starts off with this very brilliant NRI who's working in Silicon Valley as a techie, who's risen up to become one of the board level members, and suddenly he gets a call from his father, who leads a reclusive life in Amarkantak next to one of the wildlife sanctuaries, the tiger reserves, and which is the source of the mighty river Narmada, which flows all the way till the Arabian Sea. And he gets a call that his father has barely a couple of hours to live. So he rushes to India, and his wife refuses to come along with him and tells him she's going on an expedition to South America. She's an archaeologist and art photographer, but she says, but get me back that tiger skin which your father sits on, and that has more interest for me than either a Louis Vuitton or a Prada. It's more fashionable for me. So he comes home, he meets a series of accidents on the way. He loses his wallet, his plane has a technical fault, he loses his baggage, his laptop crashes, his mobile is not functional anymore. He hitchhikes, reaches his father, who is already pronounced dead. So that beautiful, mesmerizing tiger rug which his father used to pray and meditate on, which is 40, 50 years old, and he has been given the fiction that it was hunted by a friend of Jim Corbett who used to hunt along with him, called James Wilson, and they used to only hunt man-eating tigers, and this is the rug of that man-eating tiger. And James Wilson, before he left for England, had presented it to his father, and his father has preserved it very passionately, assiduously, has folded it and kept it in the almirah, and has always worshipped this rug, and has always done all his prayers and chanting and meditating on it. And so when his father dies, he wants to cremate the rug with his father, but his neighbor and father's best friend says, no, you can't do that. He says, then let me take it for my wife. She is desperate for it. He says, you can't do that either. This rug has to be donated and deposited in a conservation museum. So he goes to Jabalpur to give it to a conservation museum. There he meets a smart young boy who incidentally happens to be a poacher, who entices him to show him the skin before an open crowd and promises him some money, and he's also broke and he's going through a difficult time, so he's curious. He's not really desperate for money, but in the process, and just a few days ago, a tigress has gone missing from the Kanha Tiger Reserve. Badi Mada, the most popular tigress in the world, has suddenly disappeared. There's no trace of her, and they are both arrested for dealing in the skin of Badi Mada, on the suspicion that this is the skin of Badi Mada, and they are both arrested. When they are produced before the judicial magistrate, he says, he remembers that his father's skin had the name of the taxidermist, Van Ingen and Van Ingen. So he says, my lord, this has the label of Van Ingen and Van Ingen. It was given to my father by James Wilson, who was a friend of Jim Corbett, who used to hunt along with Jim Corbett, man-eating tigers only, never hunted any other wild tigers, and let me show it to you. So the judge says, okay, prove it. So they open the zapti and they spread it out, and he looks for the label of Van Ingen and Van Ingen. There is no label. And it's a brand new tiger skin. His father's skin used to smell of agarbattis and incense, and this skin smells of chemicals and turmeric and lime, and they are both arrested and sent to jail. In the jail, he meets the poachers, he meets the syndicate bosses, they blackmail him, and then he goes through an entire cycle. He becomes a smuggler of wildlife skins and derivatives, and the story takes you to Nepal, it takes you to Tibet, to Burma, and even to China. That is the story, and so it chronicles all the facets of tiger poaching, of the trade in endangered species, and hunting as it has occurred through the ages.
How does it happen?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You see, around the period between 2006 to 2008, that was the year, a period when practically every day I would open the newspapers in the morning, and I was posted in Madhya Pradesh at that time, which is my cadre. Now I'm posted in Government of India, and every day there would be a story about a tiger getting killed or injured in some part of the country. And that was the time, if you recall, when there was a lot of speculation whether tigers were left in the famous Sariska Tiger Reserve or not. And the forest department people kept saying that it still had a lot of tigers, but finally a Wildlife Institute survey proved that there were no tigers left. And then the Prime Minister instituted a CBI inquiry. The National Tiger Conservation Authority was set up, and it was decided to finally take up tigers more seriously. And so whereas Project Tigers was set up in 1973 by Mrs. Gandhi, 2006 was a turning point in the history of tigers, and my story is set in 2006. So that was the time when I was looking at actually a human interest story about how things can go wrong for a human being and how he can find redemption. And so the story of the techie who loses everything, who comes to India and looks for redemption. And that was when I thought of combining the tiger story, because the tigers were also being lost, and they also needed to be restored, and their situation needed to be saved. So I brought the two stories together, and therefore this is actually at the heart of it a human interest story. The tiger appears as a motif all through. Well, it's not my personal research, but I did a lot of reading on it, and went through the documents pertaining to the International Convention on Endangered Species, which is CITES, which is located in Geneva. So I went through their documents, through their various resolutions, through the various petitions before them. I went through practically every other story about tiger deaths and assembled them together. And of course, there have been lots of personal experiences over the 30 plus years of my service, starting from an assistant collector onwards, where I've either visited tiger reserves or I've been aware and have tried to control poaching and have taken action in that direction, where I have tried to disabuse and change the minds and motivations of people who are keen on hunting. I think there is a sense of greed, and there is a great lust for hunting, and there are lots of civilized people all over the world today who are paying huge amounts of money to do hunting, and today it's secretly advertised, but it's available. For $60,000 to $70,000 you can hunt and get a license for hunting a black rhinoceros. You can do an elephant for $100,000. You can do a lion for $50,000 and so on. And secretly a lot of shikar has been happening, though it has been kept under wraps. historically, of course, we have the curious study of a place not very far from here, Mysore, which had the world's biggest taxidermists, the Van Ingen and Van Ingen Company, which existed for from 1899 to 1999. And Van Ingen and Van Ingen, their official records show that they stuffed about 50,000 tigers in those 100 years and 200,000 leopards. So if officially they stuffed about 50,000 tigers, it means that there were about 4 times that number of tigers that were actually killed, because not every small hunter or poacher could have possibly sent his tiger over for stuffing. It was an expensive business, sending it all the way to Mysore and bringing it back and paying for the services of the taxidermy company. Yes, so my story has 3 main protagonists. One is, as I mentioned, the Silicon Valley Taki. He's called Chandra Prasad. The other is Gangvardhan Aranyaprem Bishnoi, who's a very committed, brilliant forest officer who is the deputy director of the Kanha Tiger Reserve. And the third is a sensuous and very beautiful, dazzling, brilliant female journalist called Sherry Pinto. And all 3 of them, they interact, and at different times they are meeting each other. They have some sort of appreciation and admiration, even lust, a sense of lust. But this ends off leaving a lot of, leaving the reader to speculate on what could possibly have happened. So, while I'm giving away the ending, it's really inconclusive. I think the best thing to do is to deposit them with the Conservation Museum, and I think the Indian government should arrange for such skins to not necessarily, and I'm not a votary of somebody of the act of burning these skins or destroying them, because they are, whatever it be, they are specimens of history, and if anything, they should motivate us and inspire us to learn from our history to improve our future. And therefore, I think they should be kept and preserved in a wildlife conservation museum.